Almost 2 weeks ago, I uploaded the video TF2 Stop Disguising as Scout, and if you haven't seen it yet, the TLDR is that I ranted about how I see tons of spy players choosing to disguise as Scout, and how players today should be a little more aware and careful around their friendly Scouts. And while the feedback on that video was mostly positive, I did have a vocal number of people, many of whom play spy more than I do, address their reasoning about why they disguise as Scout, especially due to reasons I either didn't touch on enough or at all. That, combined with a couple of other misconceptions that I want to clear up about that video, made me realize that a follow-up video would be good to make. So that's what I'm here for today, to go over some of the biggest concerns my viewers and I had regarding that video, and to finish a complete discussion of the Scout disguise phenomenon. Now, the first thing that became very clear when reading the comments of my original video was that Scout is a popular disguise target for reasons other than the ones I mentioned. I claimed that disguising as Scout was most useful because of your head hitbox appearing grossly offset and easy keyboard access via the 1 through 4 number keys and your WASD being so close together, with secondary reasons boiling down to factors like hiding behind cover more easily and retaining spy's base movement speed while disguised. And while I and a few others agree with that reasoning, others brought up the fact that not only is the Scout disguise not always used to fool the enemy, but rather it's primarily used because of the latter benefit, keeping spy's base movement speed. Now, this does make sense, since other disguises make you slower, which in turn makes some enemies difficult or nearly impossible to catch up to. And if you're trying to get away from someone chasing you down, it's not exactly the easiest thing to do if you're moving as slow as a soldier or heavy. Now, I briefly mentioned, albeit in passing, that disguising as medic or an enemy spy also retains your base movement speed, but Scout makes for a more preferred choice, mainly because of another factor you guys brought up, map positioning. Scout is obviously a speedy class, and with that being said, it's common to see him on basically anywhere on the map, given his ability to run fast and the fact that he's a flanker and an offensive powerhouse. So, for example, from the perspective of both you and your team, seeing a friendly spy hanging in your backlines doesn't make a whole lot of sense since fewer enemies would be found there, and seeing a friendly medic makes even less sense because of the fewer healing targets and the fact that he'd be more vulnerable on his own. But a friendly Scout being in your backlines isn't too unusual because he can easily and quickly make his way over there, let alone any other part of the map. So despite Spy's lower movement speed making Scout spies more obvious, the fact that you can still keep your base movement speed with his disguise and Scout's ability to be present anywhere on the map are more legitimate reasons that make his disguise desirable. Another point that I saw a few times is in regards to the section on disguise key inputs. A few people claimed that Demo is an easier disguise to use from a keyboard perspective, since pressing 4 twice is easier than pressing 4 and then 1. If you're using the default disguise kit, then yeah, I could see that, but some players use the concise disguise kit, meaning Scout requires a 411 key input while Demo requires a 421 input. I think in this regard, Scout's disguise is still easier to input, and combined with the benefits I talked about earlier, would have to make Scout generally a more preferred disguise over Demo. Now, this next main point revolves around the video itself and why I made it in the first place. I mean, the title of the video literally says, "Stop disguising as Scout," and some of you guys even told me that it makes no sense to make such a demand and then go over reasons why it's a good strategy, which to be honest, does seem a bit counterproductive and contradictory at a first glance. But here's the thing, that title has less to do with a call to action and more with my frustration with Scout spies, and to convey my thoughts with the fewest words in a title format. In fact, telling you to stop disguising as Scout is probably the most ineffective thing to tell someone, right next to something like stop spawn camping or stop being a pocket medic, because I'm not trying to tell you how to play the game, it's not my place to do that. I feel like telling you to stop disguising as Scout is closer to a joking, passing remark made out of frustration and going insane from seeing my team being backstabbed over and over. And every time I saw a comment saying no in response to the title of the video, it honestly made me laugh. Because the thing is, disguising as Scout is a legit strategy that you can pull off in most settings, which is also one of the reasons I get so upset with it sometimes, because I can easily spot when a spy is disguised as Scout, and I know lots of other players can too. But not everybody can, especially newer players, which in this day and age make up a good chunk of the current player base. Of course, in higher levels of play or against more experienced players, this disguise may not work all of the time, but in nearly every in-game encounter, disguising as Scout gives you the most active benefits, with the only real downside being a mostly dead giveaway that you are a spy to more aware or experienced people. Again, the point of this video wasn't to get you to stop disguising as Scout, it was mainly just to talk about why I found it annoying in the first place. This last section is just gonna go over a couple of other random comments and good points that came from that video. Solarlight of all people talked about how even though the scout disguise may be obvious to some when looked at straight on, in a more chaotic setting or team fight, a scout moving slowly out of the corner of your eye can be easy to miss, making this disguise harder to notice if you're busy. This also plays into another point someone else made about how against good players who do notice the lower movement speed, spies can use the scout disguise to bait these players into chasing them for an easy trick stab. Both of these are pretty good points that I honestly didn't really think about when making the original video. A few of you guys also mentioned that the clip I showed of a spy chain stabbing my team wasn't exactly a good example for the main point of my video, and okay, that's fair. They all had their backs turned, so there really was no way for them to tell that our scout was a spy. But something I didn't show in that same clip was that a few seconds later, a spy disguised as scout saps our engineer's buildings right in front of two of my teammates, and they somehow don't notice or shoot him. That would have been the better part of the clip to use. Speaking of which, another point I saw was that it seemed like I was more frustrated with my team's incompetence for not spotting an obvious scout spy than the enemy spy disguising as scout in the first place. That is 100% true. I can't fault the scout disguise for being useful, but I definitely get upset with my team when they just don't realize the presence of a very obvious spy. Again, that's another reason I made the video to begin with, so that more players become aware of scout spies in general. A more specific complaint people were bringing up had more to do with the annoying nature of player outlines when you respawn, and yeah, I would have to agree that they're pretty detrimental to spy in general. These outlines can easily make you tell which of your teammates is a spy, especially if you notice a teammate seemingly out of position, or in the case of scout spies, a scout suspiciously hiding in the backlines. It really sucks that this mechanic makes the weakest class that much weaker. And yes, I am aware that not all scout spies, or just spies in general, solely use the kunai and dead ringer combo. It's only a coincidence that my team constantly seems to be on the receiving end of. Using these two weapons together can make a weaker class like spy have a fighting chance against stronger classes, so it does make sense why you might see them being used together so often. But the biggest takeaway from the comments I received on that video was the true definitive reason that spies disguise themselves as scouts so often. It's because, in the Meet the Spy trailer, spy disguised as scout. Oh my god, it was right in front of us! So yeah, those were some of the nitpicks and concerns some people had with my video. I can't deny that the original video itself could have been a little more fleshed out, but I hope that these additional points can make up for some of the details missing from it. I'm not afraid to admit that I'm nowhere near the best spy player. In fact, I'm far from it, and tons of players out there have so many more hours and general experience with the class than I do. So if you're one of those players and want to share some insight on why spies might disguise as scouts so frequently, let me know. Anyway guys, thank you for watching this video and the original, and I'll catch you all in the next one.